Well, good day, everybody. Welcome to the Smart Meetings webinar series. We're glad you could make it today. I'm Don Power, Audience Development Manager with Smart Meetings. We're very pleased to have John Iannini, Vice President at Melia Hotels International, and he'll be presenting today the origins and opportunities around all-inclusive resort packages. We're very happy to have John. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items to keep in mind today. There's no dial-in for this webinar. You can listen from your computer, which you're probably doing right now. You'll find a Q&A box on your screen where you can type in questions during the presentation. We'll have a Q&A after John's presentation where John will answer as many questions as he can during the webcast. John will also be available via email should you have a question that's not answered during the webcast today. We're also live tweeting this presentation. So we're at Smart Meetings on Twitter, and we're using the hashtag SmartMTGS. So if you'd like to engage with us and tweet along and tweet anything that you hear today from John's presentation, that would be wonderful. And we'll also communicate and converse with you as well on Twitter. You will also receive CEU credits for today's session. After you've watched and listened to 40 minutes of the presentation, you'll see a link in the certification box on the left-hand side of your screen where you can scroll down, click on the icon, and download the certificate. You can also get the certificate at a later date by signing in to the archived webinar. We are really pleased as well for everyone on the webinar today. We have a special opportunity for attendees of this webcast exclusively. Melia Hotels International has generously provided a wonderful prize, a 5-night all-inclusive getaway at Paradisus Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic that can be won by someone on this webcast today. Some conditions apply, but we'll give you full details of the prize and how you can win after the Q&A portion of this webcast. So be sure that you stick around till the end for that. Although John's presentation no doubt will be wonderful and engaging, that it won't need this incentive. Nevertheless, I'm very pleased to introduce, as I've mentioned, John Iannini, Vice President of Meetings and Events for Melia Hotels International. When John has 32 years of hospitality industry experience. He studied hospitality management at Johnson & Wales University and earned a BS at the University of Denver School of Hotel and Restaurant Management. I could go on with John's bio, but suffice it to say that he knows his stuff and he's an expert in this industry. Also, he's very engaging and very personable, and I'm sure he'll be available for you to connect with via email after this presentation. So, John, I'd like to turn it over to you to get started, and we will do a Q&A at the end of the presentation, but the folks can put in their questions right now as we go along in the Q&A box. Take it away, John.
Wonderful. Thank you, Don. I appreciate it. Good day to everyone from sunny Playa del Carmen, Mexico. I happen to be down at one of our all-inclusive resorts today for a business function, so I'm happy to be able to do this live stream with you from one of our resorts. I'd like to welcome you also to what I'm going to call an All-Inclusive Plan 101.3. It's really not quite a beginner level. However, it will hopefully give you some great insights and takeaways on the all-inclusive and the all-inclusive model. So, well, if I look at this picture, and I guess you're looking at this picture, you're saying to yourself, that looks blurry. So I guess John has actually downloaded a blurry slide. But what I wanted to point out with this is that when it comes to all-inclusive, many planners have had some blurred vision. And today, our goal is to turn this blurry image into one that you can see very clearly now. Today's overview, as you can see, we're going to speak about 4 different topics. The first, we're going to familiarize you with a little bit of the history, where all-inclusive started, a few fun facts that you may or may not know. And as one of my friends said, boy, I'm very curious about this because I really never knew how all-inclusive started. The next topic in today's overview will be how the all-inclusive met a need, what that need was, why there was such strong demand, and what other travel segments have similar attributes to the all-inclusive. The third part of the overview today is a little bit of the modern day and how the all-inclusive continues to evolve. This will speak for itself. And then the fourth and final will be what's in it for you, which is fairly obvious. And that's probably one of the reasons that you're tuning in today to listen to this webcast. So history. And there's actually a reason for the blue sky and the ocean scene. So as we go through the history, you'll get that fairly quickly. Club Med, the fabulous 50s. So as you can see, the term all-inclusive or all-inclusive first began in the 1950s in Club Med called Mediterranean, who claims to have invented the vacation package. The first Club Med was on the Spanish island of Mallorca. So there's a lot of similarities there because our company, Melia Hotels International, was also founded in the 1950s and was also founded in Palma de Mallorca. And we are a major player in the all-inclusive market. So I really tend to believe very strongly that our company looked at the model that Club Med was running, realized how popular it was, and adapted that moving forward. The interesting thing about being on that remote island in the 50s is that you lived in an outdoor tent, the guests did. There was physical training, there was a variety of sports, and travelers even had to wash the dishes. That was kind of one of those fun facts. Now that's quite a vacation, isn't it, if you have to wash the dishes when you're on vacation? But the first enthusiasts were single people looking for fun, looking to meet like-minded individuals. And the concept was very simple. It was pay one fee, one time, and your vacation package was fully covered. In those days, it included the airfare, your accommodations, your meals, your drinks, and all your activities. However, as we go to the next slide, again, this is very, very Club Med, but I think it's very relevant. Remember the famous Club Med beads. Members wore those around their necks. They got those as they checked in. And continually those necklaces turned into bracelets as beads were removed to pay for drinks. So I know the baby boomers on this call are actually smirking a little bit, and they remember that. But some of you Gen X, Gen Y, and millennials, it's actually probably a time for you to go on Google. But please don't do it until after the call is finished. Why does the all-inclusive work in certain markets and not in all? And I think this actually is one of the questions that's asked to me the most by any particular planner or a company that's looking, that once they've experienced an all-inclusive has asked me, why don't we see this in other markets? And really, I'm going to speak to many points of this, but the primary reason is really due to the restrictive union and labor laws in many countries. So what the all-inclusive does in the markets where it works is it really allows a completely cross-trained staff. And what I mean by that is the bellman is cross-trained to be the doorman, can also be cross-trained to be a butler. Dining room staff can also work in banquets. Certainly, front desk staff can work as guest services. And if you're a bartender or a bar back, you can work in myriad of any one of the locations at a property in any one of the bars or lounges. And it really allows for no labor squabbles. because as you can imagine, with the markets being heavily in the Caribbean, the labor laws are very, very different than they are in some of the more restrictive countries. As you can also imagine, it works in certain markets because the employees get heavy gratuities. So the employees are motivated not to ask for gratuities, but people have pre-purchased a package in advance. And when they do that, they actually are not spending money on property. So many times they will reward the staff, the bartender, the waiters, people that are friendly to them, and they will take care of them at the end of their stay. Also for the staff, very, very different is they work a very different work week than other primary countries around the world. So what I mean by that is in many all-inclusives, you would find an employee working for 1 month straight and then receiving a week off. And this is primarily due to the fact that many employees don't necessarily live with their families full-time. And this allows them some more flexibility that when they do have time off, they have extended time off, and that allows them to have more family time. Hotels and resorts have accommodated this by providing housing packages on site for many of these employees, including uniforms, meals, and insurance. One of the next reasons is that the hotels and resorts buy bulk goods. And if you've ever been on a cruise and you hear the cruise director as he's doing his welcome or he's doing his icebreaker, he asks a simple question. He says to the audience, how many eggs a day do you think we serve on this ship? How many gallons of milk a day do you think we serve on this ship? So in the all-inclusive, it's a little different, and I'm just going to make a small joke about this because we do use eggs and we do use milk. But it's a little bit more pertinent in the all-inclusive model to ask, how many beers are consumed in the course of a year? On average, we serve approximately 150,000 beers a year in one of our all-inclusive resorts in the Caribbean. So that'll tell you a little bit about the consumption of one of the most popular beverages that we do have. Now we're going to speak a little bit about the AIP model from one of the strategists, from PricewaterhouseCoopers. And he says, although the business model has been limited to a narrow range of destinations so far, and I'm sure most of you know that the primary destinations where you would see the all-inclusives are Jamaica, the Dominican Republic, and Mexico. And I'm just using those three as an example. Of course, there are all-inclusives in other destinations. Berman says that there is an undisputable data that shows that the all-inclusive model on an operating margin basis is more profitable than in a traditional hotel. And he attributes that to the fact that at an 80% occupancy, that property knows exactly what they need to buy and exactly how much labor will be required. So they have far less guesswork in their forecasting than in a traditional hotel. So accurate forecasting actually becomes smarter planning, and smarter planning is a stronger return. And as we all know, the GOP, or the gross operating profit, in a hotel is the most important to any owner, any manager, or any operator. Next, I'd like to just touch on the difference between a purchased meal plan and an all-inclusive, because this comes up quite often with planners as they're putting together their budgets. This relates strictly to food and beverage. With a meal plan, as you can see, most hotels that offer a meal plan offer 2 or 3 meals per day. They offer unlimited beverages with those meals, So anything that you would consume on alcohol, whether it be a beer or a wine or a soda, etc. And then those meal plans include tips to the staff. In a traditional all-inclusive, any meal, any beverage is available 24/7. Resorts have modified the way that they do business to include that there is at least one bar and one restaurant that is always open for someone that might be on an odd time schedule, not be able to sleep, so that they will always be able to have food and beverage available to them while they're at their stay at the all-inclusive. With an all-inclusive, tax and tip are included. And in some instances, the tax in certain Caribbean destinations can be quite high. Room service is included 24/7. So again, with the fact that they keep a restaurant open 24 hours, it allows them to also operate their room service 24/7 as well. And then the last one that's actually very important and very important to many groups is that there is a stocked minibar that is replenished daily. So for groups, actually meeting planners have asked for this to be personalized. However, in some cases, there may be a service charge for that labor. And personalized means that they know that their group drinks a lot of beer, and they want to make sure that many of the sodas are taken out, but there's actually a lot of beer put in. And so, of course, if you have a group of 200 rooms, it really there's a lot of labor needed to go and take the current items that are normally stocked in the minibar out and actually add back into the minibar those items that are personalized for the group. Private functions as they relate to the all-inclusive. So here is just a few bullet points about private functions that happen for groups during an all-inclusive plan. The food and beverage is included, and it's usually offered as either a plated function or a buffet function. Standard linen and decor is usually included. And that's because the resorts normally own most of that linen, and they do have props that they keep in their storage areas for specific theme parties. However, most resorts have relationships with many of either the destination management companies or event planning companies that are in the destination, and they can actually contact them on your behalf to help you enhance the party. Basic audiovisual is included. And this would include the fact that many hotels have gone to adding screens and adding LCD projectors actually into the meeting space. And what they've done there is allowed the planner to be able to plug and play and use these for their presentations, so saving quite a bit of money from a traditional audiovisual setup, which requires extensive labor to bring the equipment in that you would need. And then per person setup fee based on additional labor is required. So depending on, and I want to give a real specific example, because I had a meeting planner that asked me why it would cost $25 per person for a setup for a beach. And I really had to sit down and give them a timeline about what it takes to produce an event on a beach versus produce an event in a ballroom. In the back of the ballroom, as everyone realizes, you have the kitchen equipment, you have the setups for the mise en place for the tables, etc. However, in a beach scenario, the stewarding department has to set up on Queen Mary's all of the equipment that would go to the beach. They actually have to roll it across the property to get to the beach area. And this has to be done at least 4 hours in advance. They have to actually set it up, which they would do in a normal setting. But one of the things that planners don't always understand is how difficult it is to work on a beach. If you've ever been a runner and you've run in the sand, You know that it's not like running on a hard surface. It's the same with the banquet setup. So the staff that has to move back and forth across the sand to be able to set tables, not just to set the tables, but to set the linen, but to set the cutlery, etc. It takes double to triple the labor to be able to do that. They've got wind, they've got possible storms, and then at the end they have to do a cleanup. And when they have to do a cleanup, it's not daylight, it's nighttime. So it takes twice as long to clean up at the end of a function because although there is light outside because the party has brought out illumination, it's not the same as being daylight. So really it takes double to triple the labor to be able to produce a function on the beach, and thus the labor charge is effective. I'd like to talk very quickly about some additional all-inclusive benefits that are actually non-food and beverage related. So gratuity is built into the package. So for the staff member, a gratuity is built in, and that gratuity is something that goes directly to the staff. There's a complimentary bell service and maid service. So those fees that would be in a traditional hotel would not necessarily be in an all-inclusive. So it allows, again, with the labor force in that particular market, for them to be able to work within the package guidelines. We're going to talk a little bit about complementary daily activities. And complementary daily activities can range from things like yoga, to stretching, to pool games. At our Paradisus resorts, we actually call them life-enriching activities. We do offer painting. We do offer watching our chef do ice carvings. We do tequila tastings in certain markets. So it's things that actually people can can use as a takeaway to be able to enhance their life or to share with other members of their family when they get home. Additional daily activities, of course, include tennis, fitness centers with complete staffs, and certainly the famous volleyball on the beach. Complimentary nightly entertainment has taken on a different role as included in a all-inclusive with nightly shows and entertainment that happens around the property. The dine-around is included in the on-site management, so many groups have the opportunity in advance to pick the number of tables and the timing that they would like, and then between the hotel staff that either works for the restaurant department or the travel staff for the particular group, they're allowed to pick and choose times and restaurant cuisines that they would like. And then, of course, meeting space that's proportionate to the room block, including audiovisual, the setups, and any decor that they may be looking to do.
That's fantastic information, John. I'd just like to step in here just as a reminder that we're live tweeting the presentation today on Twitter with hashtag SmartMTGS. You can also ask questions as you're listening to the webcast, clicking on the Twitter icon in the top right corner of your screen or live on Twitter itself. And we will also, if you recall, we'll have a special prize on offer today, and we'll talk about how you can win that prize at the end of the Q&A session at the end of John's presentation today. So please stick around for that as well. So remember, live tweeting at SmartMTGS, and take it back away, John. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don, for those housekeeping announcements. You never thought you'd be on a webcast and actually have a public service announcement, so that can be a first. So we appreciate that, and we hope that some lucky person is the beneficiary of this fantastic 5-night stay that we have at one of our Paradisus resorts. I wanted to begin next with just having a brief case study, and it really was talking about Bob, the meeting manager, who actually was tasked with sourcing an incentive program for his company, and had learned a lesson. So let's just talk a little bit about Bob. Bob wasn't up on the AIP plan. He was actually asked by his boss, who was the director of sales, for Bob to source a program that would be 3 nights in a Caribbean destination. And he had visited with his family in the past a wonderful resort and asked Bob to consider that resort as part of the process. The company did mandate competitive pricing, and Bob got pricing from 3 particular properties, and Bob did his contracting. So a week after Bob finished his contract and signed the contract with a particular property, he was invited on a FAM by a DMO, by one of the tourist boards. So Bob checked his schedule, and he had the availability, and he signed up for this and qualified for this based on his company's spend. And Bob took the trip and went to an all-inclusive resort for the first time. So while Bob was on the property, he really enjoyed the all-inclusive product line, and he sat down and had conversation with one of the sales managers as it related to the meeting that the incentive trip that he just booked. And Bob did sit down and he did ask the right questions, because he really wanted to dig down and understand how the model worked and what the benefit would be to his customers. Then Bob completed a side-by-side analysis when he got home, because I don't want you to think that Bob took his laptop on this trip and actually worked. He actually had the opportunity to take this as a weekend trip. But what Bob noticed was that when he did a side-by-side comparison, he noticed that many times the big number tends to scare us, and the big number is, of course, the daily room rate. But what he didn't realize is that when he looked at all the additional components against a comparable non-all-inclusive property in the same destination, in a comparable U.S. hotel downtown, which could be an incentive program, that although the room rates were less, by the time he factored in all the meals and all the tips and round-trip transportation, that when he looked at the bottom line, he realized that he spent more money than he needed to spend. So these weren't necessarily the best options for him. And just to do a quick comparison, you can see that the percentage savings per person for a comparable non-all-inclusive property was approximately 18%. And these are pretty realistic numbers. They're taken from actual proposals. We didn't do a deep dive on every single line item, and the reason we didn't is because most of those were comparable across the 3. But I wanted you to see, especially on the daily room rate and on the meal functions, what the differences were between a comparable non-inclusive property costing approximately 18% more, or bottom line for $6,500, or a comparable downtown U.S. hotel, again, that would cost approximately 24% more, or $8,400 to his company's bottom line. So what we can learn from Bob is that it's great to be able to do cost analysis side by side. And this really showed him that by doing a deep dive and looking at these numbers side by side, he didn't take the time to be able to look at the fact that a daily room cost really swayed him one way or the other. And then another best practice could have been that Bob has a lot of meeting planner friends and colleagues, and Bob could have reached out to any one of these colleagues. Additionally, he belongs to certain professional organizations, and within those professional organizations, he could have also gathered more information, certainly from their education pages on their websites. So the takeaway here is Bob needed to break down his misconceptions because the ability to sell to his leader, and he needed to really work on the ability of how to sell this to his leadership. That really would have been the takeaway from this particular discussion. Just to continue to talk about the evolution today. So I wanted to talk a little bit about buffets. When I spoke to our food and beverage director, who's worked for our property for many, many years, he said to me that it was interesting to him that in the early days of a buffet, that all people were concerned about was how much food they could eat and how quickly they could eat it. So it was all about the volume. It was all about the variety. And that's how people viewed all-inclusives. However, today, that's drastically changed. And really, the enhanced gastronomy, which has moved really the all-inclusive models from buffet-centric dining to fine dining, really offers multiple global cuisines. Each restaurant now is designed as its own independent restaurant. Most of those restaurants have bars so that a guest can enjoy a cocktail while they're waiting for their table. And then last but not least is many resorts have started to add either a celebrity chef and or Michelin dining chef experiences to their resorts. What I can say about this is that although there tends to be a surcharge for a Michelin star restaurant experience, this can tend to be a 3-hour dining experience with a wine pairing at the same rate or less that you would pay for in the United States or in a mainstream European city. For instance, at our resorts, we charge approximately $90 for that 3-hour pairing per person, including the tax and gratuity. But what that allows is a full 9-course dinner, including very high-end wines and champagnes. We never have any guests that walk away feeling that they can't that they haven't had the finest dining experience. And actually, one meeting planner said to me, as we were doing a site inspection, that was the best meal that I've ever eaten in my life. And that was in one of the Michelin star restaurants. The next thing that I wanted to touch on when it comes to the food and beverage very quickly is there are many healthy choices. Resorts have made an effort to make sure that they have options for vegans and for people that have special dietary restrictions. Each one of the buffets normally has signage that tells guests exactly what's in each of the food offerings that's on the buffet, so the guests can make actually smart choices before they put the food on their plate. And after all, really the kitchen is the heart of the house, so the dining is one of the most important elements of an all-inclusive. The evolution today a little bit, just to talk a little bit more about what offerings are within the all-inclusive environment. There's a butler concierge service area for adults only. So many resorts have gone to an adults-only either section, or some brands have gone to a strictly adults-only resort. What this allows resorts to be able to do is to cater to specific markets and allow them to produce food and beverage that would be specific to those particular guests. Also, there's a butler service for children or for families. And this evolved out of the fact that it was so popular with the adults that it became also very popular with families. For instance, I will give you an example. A customer came down for a site inspection with his family and stayed for 3 nights at one of our properties. At the end of that visit, I was meeting with the family to say goodbye. And the spouse of the meeting planner pulled me aside and she said to me, "I have to say to you that this was a wonderful experience for all of our family. but especially for my son Ted, who's 10 years old. And I said, well, I'm glad Ted enjoyed himself. And she said, the personal butler, Raul, that you assigned to us became Ted's best friend. And any time that he needed anything, whether he wanted a Diet Coke, he just picked up the phone and he said, I'd like to speak to my butler. She said, so my problem is now I'm going to go home and he's not going to be able to dial a phone and I'm going to bring him a Diet Coke. So she said, your services have worked and it's memorable and I really want to thank you for that. The next part of the evolution is that entertainment moved from a fixed theater to spontaneous appearances around hotels. Many of us know that in the cruise ship environment that everyone left the dining room at the end of the two seatings, went to the showroom, and actually watched the show that was produced on their behalf, whether it be a comedian or a Las Vegas review show. However, resorts, as in the early days, took on that same sort of entertainment style. They used to have a showroom, and that showroom used to be the place where a theater where guests used to go and used to be able to watch a particular show, whether it be a Vegas review show or a Michael Jackson show or a Caribbean show that related to some sort of Latin dancing, etc. However, now you'll see a more spontaneous pop-up experience for entertainment around each resort. You'll see very much a similar, a Cirque du Soleil type of environment, so acrobatics, where people actually hang from points around the property and wouldn't be in a showroom, but might be hanging right over a bar. You might see a clarinetist playing just in a bar and just entertaining guests. Or you just might see a classical guitarist, or very typical in Mexico, you might see a small mariachi band marching around the property, actually entertaining guests and asking for requests. And another part of the evolution today is the Gen X. So we call it the guest experience, and it's a staff that's 100% dedicated to the guest enhancement. And the guest enhancement is really about the five senses. It's about what a guest is going to see, how the lights change from day to night, the smells, the scents that are lit and put underneath some of the furniture, so you actually have incense burning. The music that guests would hear daytime would be lively and upbeat, to evening where it might be a little bit more staid and a little bit more calm. And then, of course, the taste. The food samplings and the bar samplings. We've even gone as far in Paradiso's resorts to create a beverage menu. And that beverage menu is with a professional mixologist who has created and trained our bartenders to be able to produce special enhanced drinks so that you actually have not just a standard gin and tonic or a standard beer, but you can have a mojito made with watermelon, or you can have a martini infused with jalapeno. Things that actually stimulate the senses and show that it's not just a standard offering. And I forgot to advance the slide, so I apologize for that. But I'm back on track. Part of the evolution today that we talked about was the dual concept and the single concept. But again, for the group side, you can see that modern audiovisual capabilities are available. So in many resorts now, the audiovisual companies have the ability to do video mapping, things that they weren't able to do before. And as I mentioned earlier, they're actually able to do the built-ins. And the built-ins include having screens that are already in the room and actually having LCD projectors that come down from the ceiling. Another evolution is that it's a no-cash environment. So most guests, when they go into the hotel, may take out $30 or $40 for tips, but the rest of their cash is locked up in their wallet and their passport's locked up in the safe. Wi-Fi is included everywhere. I think that's one of the biggest changes in the last 4 years to most resorts. is that the infrastructure had to change, where guests wanted to be able to not only just email their family, but they wanted to be able to send pictures, they wanted to be able to send data, they wanted to be able to stream, they wanted to be able to FaceTime, they wanted to be able to have a real-time experience with their family that they weren't able to ever had before. And I'm sure for some of those planners that remember back 15 or 20 years ago, everything was done by telephone and everything was extremely expensive. So if you wanted to make a 3-minute call from the Caribbean to the United States, that could cost you up to $15 just to let you know, just to let your family know that you had arrived. Also part of the evolution again today is the high-end spas and the beauty salons. I'm not going to speak too much to the wedding market because most of us are very aware of that, but and because that's very common with making sure that there is a high-end beauty salon to get the bridal parties ready. But as far as the spas go, the spas are getting bigger and better. And actually an interesting statistic in our properties is, because we do demographic drill downs, is that we find that more men than women utilize our spa. So that's actually changed from many, many years ago. And the last but not least is that golf is included in some resorts, and our Punta Cana properties, golf is included, just an extra fee for the cart, or it's very, very nearby. So as we begin to wrap up today, to be conscious of your time, we want to talk a little bit about what's in it for me. So what's in it for you is, as a meeting planner, is a little bit less work, because when you look at an all-inclusive and you're doing a dine-around, there's actually no transfers. There's actually a stronger margin for you in an all-inclusive. Because as I mentioned before, accurate forecasting becomes smarter planning, becomes a stronger return. And then there's happy customers. There's the value for dollar. And I don't think that any customer ever walks out of an all-inclusive and says to themselves that they don't feel that they received a value for the dollar. And last but not least on this is the pure freedom to be. That's the mantra that Melia Hotels International uses. It allows the guest in an all-inclusive to have the freedom to do what they want and when they want to do it. So just remember, as you're planning your next program, with an all-inclusive, you get food and beverage costing up front. There's no, probably one of the most biggest forecasting headaches for a meeting planner in a non-all-inclusive is being able to forecast the amount of liquor that the group may consume. And I'll give a classic example from when I was a meeting planner 10 years ago. I once got a bill for water because we were in a very hot, very muggy environment in the Caribbean. And at that particular cocktail party, my group consumed 450 waters at $5 per bottle plus. So we consumed more than $2,500 worth of water alone before the first cocktail went in their mouth. So there's really no surprises at reconciliation. The ease of billing, the fewer line items, fewer package extras, and all the things that go on there which is just the VIP incidentals. And that many resorts now continue to employ and have certified CMPs on their conference service teams. They want trained MICE teams because it's extremely important to them to be able to have folks that know how to relate to a meeting planner and be able to take their offerings and translate those offerings to a group environment. So really the changes in the marketplace have really pushed the way that companies are doing business these days. So with that, I've achieved my goal time. So I'm happy to field any questions that you may have, and I believe that the call's being monitored by Miguel Sedano, and he's actually going to field any questions through Dawn to me that may come from you all. And last but not least, as Don had mentioned, this is my contact details. So if you'd like to speak to me or have any interest in getting more information on this particular presentation, please feel free to contact me at johni@soul-group.com. Thanks very much for your attention today.
Thank you, John, and that was a wonderful presentation with a lot of really insider information about the all-inclusives. Certainly very edifying to me and everyone else on the call, I'm sure. We do have quite a few questions, which is great, and we'll get to those in just a second, but I want to make sure that I get the wonderful prize mentioned before so that we don't run out of time. I want to make sure that I get that in. The prize that we're giving away is one luxury junior suite, all-inclusive of meals, premium beverages, taxes, and service fees for 5 nights at the Punta Cana Resort in the Dominican Republic. It's based on availability for 1 double room for 2 adults. The certificate is valid from July 1, 2015 to December 19, 2015, based on availability at the time of booking, and blackout dates may apply. But when you redeem or when you if you're wonderful enough to win the prize, you can discuss all of those details at booking. We will have a question, and I'm going to leave that till the absolute last, the question that you need to answer on Twitter in order to win that prize. But I'll get to that as the last question in today's session. First, I'd like to address a few of the questions that have come in from our attendees. And the first one is from Lisa, and it asks, what new markets are AIPs entering? Are there any non-Caribbean locations?
I can speak from our company. We're actually looking at resort areas in Brazil, as well as looking at as far away destinations as Bali, so in Asia. So I think what companies are looking at, as I said on probably the 4th slide, is it has to fit in the environment in order to be a profitable model. But I think you'll continue to see that in certain markets it will become, especially with companies that have perfected the model, and there's several ones out there, you would be able to look on their website and see as they continue to evolve those markets. But I know that South America, it's continuing, and as well as Asia.
All right. This one is from Barbara, and it asks, can you still select a preferred menu, or do you have to use their default standard menus?
I can speak specifically to our hotel. We do allow guests to have a experience with our culinary team, so that as long as the food offerings meet the budget that's associated there, we would be able to offer that. I think where the challenges come in is when there's an expectation for a higher end delivery, and what I mean by that is someone that goes in and wants Maine lobster, where something would have to be flown in or brought in from one of our purveyors. That can tend to be an extra surcharge.
Okay. This question is from Deja, and it says, I see in the side-by-side cost comparison slide you added $30 for transportation to the hotel. Is that not something that is usually included with all-inclusive properties? With group offerings, the transportation is not normally included. That is an extra because of the way that the guest experience is for the groups. And so most groups want dedicated van service and don't want to share transportation with other guests or stop at multiple properties. So we found that most meeting planners are looking for a private experience, and that does come with a surcharge. Okay. This one is from Jennifer, and it asks, what is your biggest expense with the AIP model for the hotel side?
The biggest expense by far is the room. And then the next, of course, is the food and beverage side of it. So the room is actually the highest element, the cost element of the experience, and it's of course because of the attendant for the room and the washing of the linens and the restocking of the amenities and things that go in the particular room. And the energy that actually goes into those particular rooms, especially on the air conditioning side. Many resorts haven't gotten to a key access for air conditioning where you walk in like the European conservationists where you stick the key in and then the air conditioning comes on. So we find that especially in the Caribbean, energy is such a high commodity and a high cost that pushes the cost of the room to be the most expensive component of the all-inclusive.
Okay. And this one is from Barbara, and it asks, I think this will be the last question, and then we'll get to our contest question. But this one's from Barbara and asks, during non-buffet dining, do guests select from a prix fixe type menu?
So could you say that once again, because I just want to make sure I understand the question correctly?
Yes. So it asks, during non-buffet dining, do guests select from a fixed prix type menu, so a standard menu that's already designed?
The menu, like any restaurant anywhere in the world, is designed, but it isn't a prefix menu that allows you only one choice of food. It's a full buffet menu. It's a full a la carte menu, and it actually allows you a healthy selection of appetizers, of salads, of entrees, and of desserts.
Okay. And I think we'll sneak in one more question. We've had a lot here, and for those that didn't get their questions answered today, you can email johni@soul-group.com. But one last question from Sharon. Can you arrange a golf outing just for your group?
And yes, that absolutely is possible. At our particular resort where we have a golf course in Punta Cana, we actually have a golf pro that runs our golf shop, and he actually, with the convention services manager, can set up a full golf tournament. The hotel, as part of the package, can include a box lunch, and the only thing that could be extra is if they want a dedicated beverage cart, but in most cases, many guests would be able to get some beer and some water in advance, and then they're good to go to play golf. Okay,
that's great. All right, John, thank you very much for your question and answer and your presentation, obviously. We're going to get to the contest question now that our attendees can tweet us the answer using the hashtag SmartMTGS so that we can know it's you. The question is, tweet one reason you would hold an event at an all-inclusive resort. So tweet your answer to @SmartMeetings or just tweet it with the hashtag SmartMTGS. One reason you would hold an event at an all-inclusive resort. And we will pick one winner from our respondents within the next 24 hours. So you have one day to reply, and we'll pick a winner and let you know privately, and you will be enjoying a wonderful getaway at the Punta Cana Resort. Just before we say goodbye today, I wanted to again thank John and Melia Hotels, Punta Cana Resort, Paradisus, and for providing this wonderful information today. If you have any questions about the webcast or any of the content, you can always let us know via email at webcasts@smartmeetings.com. And I'd like to let you know about our next webcast. It's coming up on July 14th at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, and it is Zero Waste Meetings with presenters Paul Salinger and Shauna McKinley from Meet Green. And as we all know, Green Meetings is becoming a really popular and sought-after feature and function for meetings these days. Find out more about that on our webcast July 14th. Thank you again to John Iannini, Melia Hotels, and to all of our attendees today who joined the call. It was really wonderful, John. I learned a lot today, as I'm sure our presenters did as well. So thank you again for all this great information.
My pleasure.
So thank you. Don't forget to live tweet, and you can answer the question, tweet one reason you would hold an event at an all-inclusive resort. Include hashtag SmartMTGS, and we'll pick one winner in 24 hours for the wonderful prize. Thank you so much for attending our webcast today, and we'll talk to you soon.